Isn't that a daisy?
You son of a bitch.
Tombstone looks smooth, confident, and effortless on screen. But what the cast finally revealed years later tells a completely different story. Behind the famous lines, the gunfights, and the cool standoffs were moments of chaos, fear, real injuries, and secrets the studio never wanted the public to hear. Join us as we uncover what really happened behind the scenes. The day the set fell apart. The early weeks of filming Tombstone were supposed to be exciting, organized, and full of momentum. Instead, they began sliding into chaos under the weight of director Kevin Jarrett's perfectionism. Jarrett believed every frame had to reflect history with absolute accuracy. He wanted the cast to move exactly as people of the Old West would have moved, speak with precise timing, and stand in exact positions he imagined in his mind. Even small details slowed everything down. If a horse galloped a little faster or slower than Jarrett wanted, the shot had to be redone. Some days, the actors rode the same stretch again and again until they were frustrated and exhausted. These repeated takes ate up long hours. Scenes that should have taken a morning to film stretched into entire days. The schedule fell apart. Money poured out as fast as the minutes on the clock. Studio executives began calling non-stop, demanding answers. Instead of the strong, confident production they expected, they saw a film sinking under its own weight. The pressure reached a breaking point. The studio decided they could not wait any longer for Jarre to get control of the set. His perfectionism had turned into a roadblock, and with the budget dropping fast, they made the tough decision to remove him. The cast and crew woke up one morning and learned the director was gone. No replacement was named. No instructions were given. They were in the middle of the Arizona desert, surrounded by equipment, costumes, and animals, but with no leader. People stood around quietly, unsure of what to do next. Some were angry. Others were worried the entire production might shut down. Everyone waited for someone to step forward, but no one did. Hours passed with little movement, and the confusion grew heavier. It was during this uncertain time that Kurt Russell began to take action. He did not make a speech or ask for permission. He simply started doing what needed to be done. He arrived early to look over camera setups. He reviewed scenes and cut lines that slowed the story. He spoke with actors about how to move and deliver certain moments. He guided the crew on which shots should come first. He became the person everyone looked to, without ever officially being given the position. His work went far beyond acting. He shaped the pace of the film and held the team together, and protected the project from collapsing. The long days and stress wore him down, and people noticed how tired he looked, but he pushed on. The studio told him he could never speak publicly about directing. They did not want legal problems or attention from industry groups. Russell carried the responsibility in silence. Years later, he admitted, "If Tombstone survived, it's because I had to carry it day by day." And this was only the beginning of the challenges the cast would face behind the scenes. Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday. Val Kilmer approached the role of Doc Holliday with a level of dedication that surprised everyone around him. He didn't want to look sick through makeup alone. He wanted his body to actually feel the strain that Doc would have lived with. To do this, Kilmer developed his own intense routine. Before certain scenes, he stayed in a cold room long enough for his body temperature to drop. When he walked onto the set, his skin looked pale and tight, and his movements were naturally slower. He also drank very little water. This made his lips dry and cracked, and caused his energy to fade during the day. It was a physical choice that made his voice softer and his breathing rougher. Kilmer also trained himself to breathe in short, shallow bursts. This created a look of constant tension in his chest and face. similar to someone struggling with a long-term illness. His muscles stayed tight, and he carried himself with a weak posture. All of this made his performance feel real, because much of what the audience saw on screen was not acting. It was his body reacting to stress. The crew began noticing how drained he seemed. He did not joke around or talk much between takes. He saved every bit of energy for the camera. This approach reached a dangerous point during the filming of a quiet saloon scene. It wasn't a big action moment or a high-emotion scene. It was simple. But Kilmer's body had been under stress for weeks. As the camera rolled, he delivered a line, paused, and then suddenly fell to the floor. People first thought he had slipped, but when they reached him, they saw he wasn't moving. His breathing was shallow, and his skin felt cold. The set medic took his pulse and saw it was faint. His temperature had dropped below normal. His dehydration was severe. It was clear he needed medical attention, but after a short rest and some water, Kilmer insisted he could continue. The studio chose not to put anything in writing. They did not want delays or questions from outside groups. They ordered the team to keep quiet and move forward. So the incident became one of the many untold stories buried behind the film. Kilmer returned to work that same day, even though his body was still weak. He refused to slow down because he believed the role demanded full commitment. And this level of danger on set didn't stop with Kilmer's collapse. The Ringo-Doc duel. The showdown between Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo is one of the most intense scenes in Tombstone. It is not just about fast hands and quick guns. It is about two men staring each other down, each trying to prove they are not afraid to die. To reach that level of tension, the cast and crew spent weeks preparing. Everyone knew this scene would be a key moment in the film. Val Kilmer and Michael Biehn treated it with special focus. They kept a distance from others on set, avoiding too much small talk. They stayed in a serious mood so that when the cameras rolled, their eyes, posture, and reactions would feel completely real. The atmosphere around them felt heavy, because everyone understood they were building toward one of the movie's biggest confrontations. What most viewers do not realize is that the guns in the scene, even though they fired blanks, were still very dangerous. A blank round has no solid bullet, but it does contain real gunpowder. When the trigger is pulled, the powder explodes and releases hot gas and debris. To hold the powder inside the cartridge, manufacturers use material called wadding, often made of paper or soft metal like copper. When the gun fires, pieces of this wadding and other tiny fragments can shoot out of the barrel at high speed. These particles are small, but they can still cut skin or damage an eye. The muzzle blast also creates a strong wave of pressure that can harm someone at close range. So when actors fire blanks in a scene, they are still dealing with real force, real heat, and real risk. On the day they shot the Ringo-Doc duel, Michael Biehn's gun had already been through many takes in earlier scenes. It had been loaded and fired over and over again. That kind of use can cause small internal parts to loosen just a little. As the camera rolled, tension was at its peak. Bienh raised his gun. Kilmer faced him, fully in character. When Biehn pulled the trigger, something inside the gun shifted just enough to change the way the blast exited the barrel. Instead of venting in the safe direction it was supposed to, a tiny piece of metal or wadding shot out toward Kilmer's face. People nearby heard a sharp ping, and Kilmer's head jerked back. At first, some thought he was acting, but then they saw him touch his face and look at his hand. There was blood under his left eye. The set went silent. For a moment, everyone froze, afraid of what they might see next. The fragment had passed just below Kilmer's eye, missing it by only a small margin. If it had hit a little higher, it could have blinded him or done far worse damage. Instead of panicking, Kilmer took a breath, steadied himself, and gave a simple response. "Shall we go again?" There was no shouting, no blaming, and no demand to shut everything down. The studio learned what happened and made sure the incident was kept quiet. They did not want an investigation, delays, or bad press. The result is chilling. One of the calmest and coolest scenes in the film was built on a moment where Val Kilmer almost paid for it with his sight. And as dangerous as that was, the rest of the cast still had their own close calls, waiting off camera. The Fall That Almost Ended. Virgil Earp. On screen, Sam Elliott's Virgil Earp looks calm, steady, and completely in control of his horse. You see a tough lawman riding through clouds of dust like he has spent his whole life in the saddle. What most people do not know is that one of those simple riding scenes nearly ended his time on the movie and left him with an injury he kept hidden from almost everyone. The day of the accident started out like any other on the Tombstone set. The crew was preparing a shot of the Earp brothers riding through town. The air was thick with dust, kicked up by horses, equipment, and the dry ground itself. The environment was crowded and tense. There were cameras, cables, crew members, extras, and animals all sharing the same narrow space. The horses were skittish from the noise and movement. When the director called action, everyone moved at once. In that instant, Sam Elliott's horse jerked harder than expected. The animal reacted to the mix of dust, shouting, and activity. Elliott was thrown off balance and launched out of the saddle. He hit the ground hard, crashing onto the packed earth. For a moment, there was complete shock. Elliott did not move. He lay face down in the dirt, covered in dust. People on set watched in fear, thinking they had just witnessed a serious, possibly life-changing injury. Some assistants were sure his back or spine had been damaged. One look at the way he landed made several crew members think, "That's it. He's done." The stillness was terrifying. No one knew whether to rush in or hold back, afraid of making things worse. Finally, Elliott started to move. He placed a hand on his chest and felt a sharp stabbing pain every time he tried to breathe. His ribs had taken the full force of the impact. It hurt to inhale. It hurt to speak. It hurt just to sit up. But instead of telling anyone how bad it was, he slowly got to his feet. Inside, he knew something was very wrong. Still, he decided to act like he was fine. Quietly, he climbed back onto the horse. He did not ask for a break. He did not request a doctor. His biggest worry was not the pain. It was the fear of being replaced. At that time, actors understood that if the studio thought someone was weak or difficult to insure, they could be removed from a project quickly. Elliott knew this, so he pushed down his fear and chose to keep working. He spent the rest of the day shooting with what were likely cracked or broken ribs. Every breath hurt. Every movement, especially twisting in the saddle or raising his arms, sent waves of pain through his chest. But he stayed in character and delivered his lines. No one watching the movie would ever guess that the man playing Virgil Earp was fighting through a real injury in those scenes. And while Sam Elliott was working through broken ribs, other cast members were facing their own dangerous moments in the middle of the dust and gunfire. The deleted gunfight. There is a gunfight in Tombstone that no fan has ever seen, not because it looked bad, but because it came shockingly close to killing its star. It was planned as a loud, chaotic street shootout, with several actors and extras firing blank rounds at the same time. The idea was to show the town exploding into sudden violence, full of smoke, noise, and confusion. The team was under pressure to move fast. The schedule was tight, and there was not much time for long rehearsals. The actors had basic blocking. They knew roughly where to stand and when to fire, but there was little room for slow, careful run-throughs. On the day of the shoot, the air was already thick with dust from horses, boots, and earlier takes. When the cameras rolled, the scene turned into exactly what it was meant to look like: a crowded street filled with gunfire and movement. Blanks were going off from different directions. People shouted, ran, and hit their marks. In the middle of this, Kurt Russell stood in position, focused, staying in character as Wyatt Earp, unaware that one small movement from someone else was about to put him in real danger. Among the performers was an extra playing a cowboy on the opposing side. His job was simple on paper: fire a warning shot into the air. The gun was loaded with a blank round. There was no bullet, but there was still gunpowder and wadding inside the cartridge. When he lifted the gun, his muzzle did not stay perfectly straight. It tilted just a little to the side, only an inch or so. That slight angle was enough to change where the force of the blast went. When he pulled the trigger, a fragment of wadding or metal shot out of the barrel, not straight up, but sideways, into the space where Kurt Russell was standing. People nearby later recalled hearing a sharp whiz cut through the noise. At the same moment, Russell grabbed his ear. For a few seconds, no one knew how serious it was. Then they saw a small cut and blood near his ear. It turned out the fragment had grazed him, passing close to the side of his head. It left a shallow wound, but its path was terrifying. If it had been just a bit more direct, it could have entered his ear canal. If it had gone deeper, it might have struck bone or even penetrated his skull. In the worst-case scenario, it could have led to permanent hearing loss, severe brain damage, or instant death. All of that came down to the angle of one shot in a scene that was supposed to be routine. The moment the risk became clear, the mood on set changed. The producers and safety team moved fast. Shooting stopped. All weapons were pulled and rechecked. They went through the guns, the blanks, and the procedures to make sure nothing like that would happen again. At the same time, the studio understood how serious the situation looked on paper. If it became official, it could trigger investigations, insurance trouble, and delays that would cost a lot of money. So the response was not just about safety, it was also about control. Details of the accident were kept quiet. Any paperwork that might have drawn attention was avoided or buried. The gunfight scene itself was dropped and never made it into the finished movie. Years later, Kurt Russell spoke about the incident in a calm and simple way, without drama, but with a clear understanding of how close he had come to real harm. He knew that a few centimeters and a slightly different angle could have changed everything. And while Russell was nearly taken out by a fake gunshot, another member of the cast was fighting a different kind of battle, one that was happening entirely inside his own head. Bill Paxton's private battle. When Bill Paxton walked onto the Tombstone set, he wasn't stepping into an easy job. He was joining a group of actors with very strong screen presence. Kurt Russell carried a powerful intensity in every scene. He was not only the lead actor, but secretly the main force holding the film together behind the camera. Val Kilmer, as Doc Holliday, had a sharp, focused energy that cut through any room he walked into. Sam Elliott brought a deep, quiet strength that made every line feel heavy and important. Around men like that, it was easy to feel small, even if you were talented in your own right. Paxton felt that pressure right away. Before the cameras even started rolling, he worried that he would not measure up. He feared the audience would only see him as the soft one, the one who faded into the background while the others carried the story. This feeling didn't stay in his head. It started to show up in his body. Paxton experienced what many people now recognize as stage anxiety. Before big scenes, his hands sometimes went numb. His heart would race. His legs felt weak, almost as if they could give out. Right before filming, he sometimes had to lean against a wall, not to rest, but to steady himself. He needed a moment to breathe and calm down enough to focus. To fight these nerves, he threw himself into preparation. He rehearsed his lines over and over, long after other people had gone home. He practiced his reactions, gestures, and expressions so much that they became second nature. By the time the camera rolled, he had done everything he could to push back against the fear that he didn't belong. The crew noticed his habits. Many of them later recalled that Paxton was often the first person on set and one of the last to leave. He wasn't doing it to show off. He was trying to prove something to himself. He wanted to be sure he deserved to stand beside Russell, Kilmer, and Elliott. He never complained about the long hours or the emotional strain. When things were difficult, Paxton simply worked harder. If a scene required more takes, he didn't roll his eyes or sigh. He took notes, adjusted his performance, and kept going. Behind his friendly appearance and kind reputation, he carried a constant pressure to match the weight of the men around him. What makes this story so powerful is how that fear changed his performance in a good way. Morgan Earp, in history and in the script, was the youngest brother. He was the most open, the most emotional, and the most vulnerable. He was less hardened than Wyatt or Virgil. Paxton's real-life anxiety slipped into the character in a natural way. His eyes sometimes showed worry. His voice carried a softness that fit a man trying to hold a family together in a violent world. All the shaking, doubt, and self-questioning he felt off camera fed directly into his role. And while Paxton was fighting his inner battle, the entire cast and crew were still dealing with something much bigger and harsher all around them: the brutal desert itself. The Doc Holliday casting switch? Today, most people can't imagine anyone but Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday. His voice, his posture, and the way he delivers every line all feel perfect for the character. But at the start, the studio did not see him as the ideal choice at all. In fact, they wanted almost anyone but him. At the time, Kilmer had a reputation for being strong-willed and very intense. Some executives saw that as a problem. They worried he would take over scenes, steal attention from others, or clash with the production team. They also feared he might shape the film around himself instead of fitting into their plan. Because of that, they pushed for a safer option. A more predictable star they felt they could control more easily and market with fewer concerns. Then came the moment that changed everything: Val Kilmer's reading for Doc Holliday. Kurt Russell was there, watching closely. He already carried a lot of responsibility for the film, especially once the production started to fall into chaos. When Kilmer began to read, Russell didn't just see a good performance. He saw someone stepping fully into Doc Holliday's skin. Kilmer's timing, accent, and delivery didn't feel rehearsed. They felt lived in, as if he had been carrying this character around long before stepping into the audition room. Russell realized very quickly that this was more than just a strong candidate. In his mind, this was the only actor who could truly make Doc Holliday unforgettable. He also understood something else. If the studio turned Kilmer down, the film's emotional core would be weaker. Russell knew he couldn't let that happen. Behind closed doors, he pushed back hard. He met with producers and studio executives and made his position clear. If they refused to cast Kilmer, he was prepared to walk away from Tombstone altogether. This was not a light threat. Russell was the lead actor and the quiet driving force behind the movie. Losing him would have thrown the entire project into serious trouble. His stance caused instant tension. Executives were upset. Producers worried about the budget, the schedule, and the risk of starting over. There were heated discussions, concerns about control, and a clear divide between creative needs and business fears. In the end, the studio gave in. They agreed to let Val Kilmer play Doc Holliday. It was a turning point that may have saved the film. When Kilmer finally arrived on set, the impact was obvious right away. The first time he spoke in character, the crew went quiet. People stopped what they were doing just to listen. His presence was that strong. There was a sense that something special had clicked into place. From that moment, nobody doubted whether he was right for the role. He wasn't just playing Doc Holliday. He felt like the real thing brought to life. And while casting choices were shaping the soul of the movie, the stunt team was about to face a terrifying moment that nearly turned one action scene into a real-life tragedy. Tombstone's closest brush with on-set death. One of the most dangerous moments on the Tombstone set happened during a scene that was supposed to show total chaos in the streets. The crew prepared a large melee sequence. Dust everywhere, loud gunfire, people running and shouting, and horses charging through the set from different directions. It was meant to feel wild and uncontrolled on screen, but behind the camera, every move was meant to be carefully planned. Among all the moving parts, one stuntman had what seemed like a simple job. He was told to run across the street, dodge the horses, and then take a controlled fall. It was a move he had practiced. For a trained stunt performer, this was routine. But in a crowded, noisy environment, even a small mistake can turn into something life-threatening. During one of the takes, that's exactly what happened. As the stuntman ran across the street, his timing and path brought him closer to a large horse. At the wrong moment, his belt caught on the animal's stirrup. It was a tiny contact point, but it locked him in place. The horse, already in motion and spooked by the sounds and dust, pulled forward with full force. The stuntman was yanked off his feet so fast he had no chance to react. In an instant, he disappeared beneath a storm of dust and legs. Many people nearby didn't even realize what was happening because there was already so much movement and noise. What followed was terrifying. The horse kept running, dragging the stuntman along the ground. His body bounced over hard dirt, rocks, and hidden debris beneath the dust. His clothes tore against the rough ground. His arms and legs were scraped and bruised as he was pulled forward. Worst of all, the horse's hooves were striking the ground dangerously close to his head. Each step landed inches away from his skull. If one hoof had come down in the wrong place, it could have crushed his face or killed him instantly. The man tried to scream, but the sound of gunfire, shouting, and galloping hooves swallowed his voice. Most people on set didn't hear him at all. The dragging went on for several long, frightening seconds. Finally, the horse slowed and came to a stop. Its front hooves slammed down one last time, just short of the stuntman's face. When the dust began to clear, crew members saw him lying there, torn up and barely moving. His face was so covered in dirt that he was almost unrecognizable at first glance. His eyes were red, his mouth filled with dust, and his body shaking from shock. But he was alive. That one fact was the only relief anyone felt in that moment. People rushed in to help him, lifting him carefully away from the horse. The mood shifted from excitement to quiet fear. Everyone understood how close they had come to witnessing a real death. The camera had been rolling through all of it. If the outcome had been slightly different, they would have captured a fatal accident on film. You might expect an incident like this to trigger official reports, safety investigations, and a pause in production. Instead, the opposite happened. The studio did not want delays. They did not want headlines about a near-fatal stunt gone wrong. So nothing was formally written up. No major investigation was launched. The accident was pushed aside as quickly as possible. People were told not to talk about it outside the set. In the end, the only lasting record was the stuntman's own body. Scars, memories, and the knowledge of how close he came to dying for a movie. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next video on the wildest true stories behind Hollywood's most iconic movies.